Hi, so I wanted to make a video talking about how I use period underwear. I'm just interested in like how other people use them, so I was thinking about how I use them. I only have Thinx underwear, and it's not because they're my favorite or anything. They're just the only ones that I've tried, and that's what I have. So when I'm talking about it, I'm mainly just talking about Thinx, but I do want to try other brands. The only thing is that I feel like there are not many other brands of period underwear. I know there are a few. I haven't tried those yet, and I want to, and I will in the future, but yeah. So basically I want to talk about like what they are, how I use them through a period, how I take care of them, and just like my thoughts on them. I have only 3 pairs. I have 2 pairs that are, well, all 3 pairs are from the organic cotton line, and I think 2 of them are just like the classic briefs, and then the other one is a little bit more high-waisted, and they're like the option that's for, I think, either a medium or a lightweight flow. The way that Thinx specifically advertises them is that you can use them as your only protection, and that you can also use it as like a backup. So you can wear the underwear and have like a tampon in, and then if you leak through, the underwear would supposedly protect you. Or depending on the type of underwear that you get and how your flow is, either in general or that day that you're wearing that particular pair, they say that you could use just the underwear itself. So the way I use it is, when I do use them, I just use the underwear and I don't use anything else. And then kind of like some context for my period, I have a pretty medium to light flow overall, so when I do have like my heavy days, they're not that heavy, they're like a medium. So I do think that is one benefit. I have read different women's experiences that it's only as a backup, that they could never use that as their only protection from bleeding through. And otherwise, I tend to just use pads and panty liners. Occasionally I'll use a tampon, but I don't really like doing that. Since I only have 3 pairs, I can't just use period underwear for the duration of any period I have. I'll go between the pairs that I have and then just my underwear with a regular pad. So usually I'll save the underwear for the heavier days. The underwear won't last me the whole day. On those days it'll be good for like half a day. So my period usually lasts 5 to 6 days, and it'll be like, the first day will be really light, so I'll just wear a pad, and then the second day usually is like light medium. Usually the second day is when I'll actually wear a pair of underwear for the Thinx underwear. The first and second day, usually I'll use up the 3 pairs I have just between those 2 days. Sorry, the second and third day. The last 2 days I'll just go back to using underwear with a pad. And I could wash and then reuse them right away, but I don't have laundry in my apartment, so I don't care too much about having to deal with wearing a pad to feel like, oh, after I use them I'm gonna wash them right away so that I can still continue wearing them for that cycle. I could hand wash them, but I don't really like to do that, which I'll get into later. So yeah, that's basically how I will actually use them. I would say if I were to use just underwear, just period underwear, Thinx or whatever brand, for the duration of my entire period, I would probably need at least 7 pairs, but I think having 10 would be good, depending on the absorption of the particular pair. So far, using this kind of underwear is the most comfortable option that I've experienced. And for the long term, to save money, to reduce like my impact environmentally. My thoughts on the actual brand Thinx. Like I said, I want to try other brands because even though I really enjoy using them, I really don't think that, at least the ones that I've tried, are the best option. I guess I'll just talk about the good things first. So I've never had an issue with leaking through them, but that obviously has a lot to do with my period. If you have a heavier period, that might not be true for you, and I've read that a lot of women have bled through them even if they buy like the most absorbent pair. I've never had that problem. Comfort wise, they are pretty comfortable, but I do think they could be a lot more comfortable, at least the pairs that I've tried. I don't know, it's kind of hard to say without having tried other brands. I imagine that any period underwear would have the pro of just being a better alternative that is comfortable for me compared to pads and tampons and anything else. I can't really say if that's like particular to Thinx or not, you know? The cons, I feel like I kind of have a long list of cons, and it's not that I don't enjoy them, but yeah, these are just things that bother me. I feel like their sizing runs small. When I bought my first pair, I bought a large, and I looked at the size chart and it seemed like, based on the size chart, that the large would be a good size for me. But when I bought them, they were tight, and they weren't too tight to wear, but it was just not as comfortable as possible. So I was gonna return them or exchange them for an extra large, and the good thing is that they did let me keep the large that didn't fit me for free. So even though I did think their sizing was off, it was nice that they let me keep that pair. And it makes sense since I tried it on and it's like an intimate piece of clothing. But I feel like some stores, like for underwear or something like that, they would still accept the return and probably like discard of the item or something, or destroy it, as opposed to letting you keep it and still sending you the replacement. So that was cool. I guess that should have been a pro too. But yeah, so overall I do feel like the sizing is small. The third pair that I bought, I did buy an extra large, and that was still like the appropriate size for me, even though it didn't really match up with their size chart. Yeah, it just makes me feel like even if their sizing, it might go up to 2XL. Like if I'm already an extra large, then a 2X is not going to be that much bigger. Then there's still so many people who would not be able to fit into the underwear. As far as like the actual fit, it's not as comfortable as possible. I think they're supposed to be like kind of snug, but they're a little like too snug for my liking. And then with the way that the brief, I think it is like the pattern is designed, the waistband for example is annoyingly like thin compared to the rest of the material. So it does that thing where when it's up against your waist, like obviously like not a lot of people have like a stomach that's gonna be flush with their pubic bone, I guess. So the waistband folds over because of my stomach. So that's really annoying. Like even if I fix them, it'll still just fold over. So now it's just like learned to fold over, and it's just uncomfortable. This happens with the large or the extra large to me. Another con that I don't know if it's particular just to Thinx or if it's just going to be an issue with period underwear in general is that I guess the material's not as comfortable as I would like it to be. I did get the organic cotton, but it feels like, I guess because it has stretch in it, I feel that material in it too, and it's not as soft and breathable. And it makes sense too because obviously there's layers built in that are made for capturing your blood. It's probably an unrealistic or unfair con that I'm saying that the material's not breathable, because why would you want breathable material for holding your blood? Yeah, sometimes it's just annoying and it's not comfortable, but I guess that's just like a sacrifice that has to be made. With the like longer brief or high-waisted whatever pair that I have, that one is kind of weird fitting too, because I feel like the the gusset part is not wide enough. And obviously it depends on your body, but I usually never have this problem. So it fits me well on my waist and up, but sometimes it's like loose at the bottom, but it's also too thin. I don't know if that makes sense. It kind of like defeats the purpose. I get worried like that it's not gonna, blood or whatever can rub off on my clothes or something. Yeah, so overall I feel like the cuts of the underwear can be improved with Thinx in particular. Another issue that I'm kind of wary about, but at the same time it's like, you know, I don't really think of this for most of the other materials in my life, but there was like an issue. Actually, there's two things. So one thing is a study having coming out regarding the treatment of even the organic cotton that Thinx uses, and having certain unsafe chemicals detected in it at high amounts, and that's kind of like going against everything that is being advertised about their underwear, and specifically like organic cotton. You think like it's gonna be safe for your body and for your skin, and you're not gonna have to worry about toxic chemicals, but then when you read something like this, it kind of makes you feel like, you know, I can't really trust the brand or any brands. And it is a big deal, because this is something that's like an intimate piece of clothing that's against a sensitive part of your body. When I read about that, and I'll link about that, it kind of made me feel like, oh, I don't want to use them, you know, because now I'm worried about this other thing. But then at the same time, I buy so many, well, I don't buy a lot of clothes, but a lot of the clothes and stuff that I already have, like, they're not even pretending or advertising themselves as like being safely treated. I already know that I'm already like exposed to so many chemicals through so many of the other surfaces in my life. So just because I happen to know about this particular instance, me like not using it is not necessarily going to protect me, because there's so many other areas in my life that I'm exposed to these things, and all of us are. But like I said, because they have like advertised themselves to be safe in that way, it can be more frustrating, because you think that you're buying something that doesn't have those harmful things, but then it ends up still having it. I haven't seen anything else come out from that. I think like Thinx refuted that or something, but I haven't looked into it again to see if there's been like more testing done, so, or if like they've kind of been more open about their practices. So I'll probably look into that. But yeah, that's like another con. Second thing that's image related or like ethics related is there's this artist whose Instagram handle I think is Bunny Michael, and they are a queer artist who has like really cool, they do like pictures and I think other mediums, but obviously on Instagram I see pictures, and they have this thing where it'll be like multiple forms of them, and it's just like about self-reflections on life and inner thoughts and how we see ourselves and how we put ourselves out into the world, and like self-worth and things like that. And they've had this like series and this kind of like idea in their art for many years. So it turns out that like apparently Thinx had reached out to them to collaborate based on this idea and this kind of like artwork that they've been doing, and use it in a Thinx ad. And I guess they consulted, but it ended up like they weren't gonna go that route, and that was fine, you know. But then Thinx did come out with advertising with a pretty famous actress, and she was in Broad City, I think, Alana Glazer, I think, I don't know if I said her name right, but they used that actress as the main like character or whatever in the ads, and they were using that idea of like multiple selves and promoting like self-care and whatever in this way, in the format that Bunny Michael did. So it just was very disrespectful and kind of like, you know, stealing Bunny Michael's artwork and not paying them and not working with them, but choosing to go a different route while like stealing their idea basically. So that was really disappointing. Not that like I adored Thinx ever, but I already had their underwear, and it's just kind of like, if you're promoting this idea of like supporting and uplifting women and non-binary individuals through your product and whatever, and supporting like that message, but then you do something like this and it comes out, it puts a bad taste in your mouth. Like, you know, I don't want to support that brand, even though so many other brands who are a lot bigger, obviously, like they definitely do the same thing, yet like we still buy from them. Like, I don't know, like Forever 21 or something, you know, like obviously there's been many cases where artists have had their work ripped off and reproduced, and it's been sold in stores like Forever 21. When you think that a smaller brand actually cares and is actually like ethical, but they do something that's not, that's really irritating and makes you kind of like lose hope. I think they did make a statement about it and apologize and kind of try to say at first that it was like it may have been connected, but it wasn't like them really stealing the idea. But, and it's not to say that the artist Bunny Michael was the only artist who had ever had that kind of imagery and themes in their art. You know, they weren't trying to say that they were the only one who did that and started that, but just based on like everything that had occurred prior, that's why the artist came out and said that it was like Thinx stealing their art and not paying them and being disrespectful and choosing not to work with them. So that was also another big con. It's not like everything that I buy, that I try to buy like from well, I am trying to now, but it's not like everything that I've ever bought in the past has come from a perfect brand who upholds and practices all these like ideals that we want to have in the world. But I didn't necessarily purchase from them just because I thought that they had these ideals and they upheld them. It's just kind of like that they're the only period underwear brand that I was really aware of and felt like was legitimate that I could buy from. Some people that is kind of like one of the main factors, especially if you have the resources, like the money to have that as one of your main like incentives to buy or not buy from a particular company or brand or whatever. But anyways, another con that has to do with washing. So depending on how much work you're willing to put into washing clothes, you know, you might not want to deal with air drying clothes or hand washing clothes, or like rinsing out your underwear after your period. So the way that Thinx in particular say that you have to care for your underwear is that after you take a pair off from immediately using it, you need to right away rinse out the blood, and then you can leave it to dry, and then I think within a few days they say you should wash the pair. And you can wash it in like a regular cold gentle cycle with your clothes, but they do say to air dry it. So that might be too much work for some people. For me, it's pretty good. I'm okay with it. The only thing, like, so since I'm okay with it, I don't really view that as a con, or it's a con that I'm willing to take on. It's not a problem to me. The con I do have is that sometimes, and this is a problem that I have in general with air drying things sometimes, but sometimes because it is like thick and multi-layered underwear, when it dries, it takes a while to dry. And obviously it depends on the climate that you're drying it in, but I live in Southern California and it's pretty sunny and warm here most of the time. Even on like days like that, if I air dry it, it'll take a long time to air dry, and then I run the risk of the problem of it like smelling weird because it's been wet too long, you know, like that mildewy smell. Or not even after you wash it, but like after you rinse it out, you have to wait for it to dry then. So in those two drying processes, I feel like leaves room for gross smells from drying time and being wet. I feel like that is really inconvenient, or like I don't want to deal with that. It makes me want to wash it again, and then you have to wait for it to dry again. So yeah, that's kind of a big con for me lately, and I don't know if it's just Thinx or if it's gonna be for any period underwear in general. I have been able to dry them outside sometimes, and when I dry clothes outside, that definitely helps, but I can't always do that because I live in an apartment and I don't have like an outdoor area. Because I wash my clothes at my parents' house and they have a yard and whatever, so when I'm drying at their house, I can leave my air dry stuff outside so that it dries quicker. But sometimes, like, depending on my schedule or whatever, or if that's the last thing I wash, I have to come home and then I leave my stuff to air dry here in my apartment, and like I said, I have to put it inside because I don't have an outside area. So those are the times when it'll take a long time to dry. And a lot of people are in the same position where maybe they do laundry at a laundromat or somebody else's house, or even if they have their washing machine in their house or apartment, Thinx does say to air dry it. So if you air dry it inside, you could deal with having to wait a long time for it to dry, and then it's dealing with that smell, and then you might be like, oh, I need to rewash it. I'm still trying to figure out how to deal with that. To work around that, honestly, I have put my Thinx underwear in the dryer on like the coolest setting possible, and they were fine. I read somewhere on the internet that a few other people have done this and they said that their underwear has been fine, you know, because sometimes you just don't have the time to wait for things to air dry, or like if you experience the problem I have, you don't want to deal with that. So I tried drying them in the dryer with my clothes and they were fine. They didn't shrink, they didn't get messed up, but Thinx doesn't recommend that, and in general, like, doing that wears your clothes down faster, so you are putting yourself at risk of ruining your underwear if you put them in the dryer. I might still just end up doing that each time, and I'm just like accepting the fact that I'm shortening their lifespan, most likely. That's basically it for the video. Hopefully it kind of helped give people a better idea of like options for when you're on your period and different things you can do. And then if you're looking into this particular brand that I've tried, kind of give you some insight into the brand and how their underwear works. Thank you very much if you watched, and yeah, bye.